And we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is Tuesday evening, and I'm about to give you one of my favorite webinars. Don't tell anyone, but this is the future of weight loss. The whole world needs to see this because it is more important than banting, keto, any other diet you've ever heard of. I just said that. This is more important than banting or keto. And so when you hear about banting, people go, another diet. And everyone who joins Real Meal, their intention is to never go on another diet again. And every single time people go on a diet, their intention is to never go on a diet again. And so this is my presentation about how to never go on another diet ever again. So I just love this image because these are the pictures that people imagine when they think of going on a diet or ending the war with their weight. And it's ridiculous, you know. You see these pictures of people eating salad and smiling, and most people who start a diet, they dread that. They think they're giving everything up, and they come into all kinds of hurdles. So I want to get you to have this expression when you're eating healthy food, but actually mean it instead of thinking, instead of it being sarcastic and some kind of meme. And I want you to get settled in because I want you to stay to the end. And if you stay to the end, I am going to show you some pictures of when I invaded France in my Speedo. Okay, so the catch to that story, but at the end, I'm going to show you all how I invaded France in my Speedo. So please stay to the end. And then if you do stay to the end and you don't, and I don't bring this up, please remind me because I'll show you. If you're watching this now, please leave a comment. Say, hello. Did I say Speedo? I did say Speedo. So at the end of this webinar, you are going to know why I'm going to crush 3 myths for you. The first myth is that you have no willpower. You absolutely have willpower. And the reason you may have failed at diets in the past is nothing to do with the willpower that you do or do not have. I am going to disprove your own theory that you are an emotional eater. And I am going to disprove the theory that a lot of us want to lose weight so that we can find love, so that we can be accepted, so that we can fit in. And I'm going to slash that to pieces. Okay, so stay tuned because you're going to feel a million times better about the weight loss journey that you're on at the end of this. So we've done a lot of stuff right. This is the slide I always show people to say, you know, I've been on this journey. I've learned a lot about transformation. I thought I knew a lot about transformation when I started Real Meal Revolution, but we have made a lot of mistakes. And so, you know, there's this thing that we do. We set SMART goals, which are really good. And we've asked people to check the scale and check the tape measure. But what happens often is things go bad. People become obsessed with the data. And so we've done a lot of stuff that's wrong around that in the past. But and then people end up revolting. They revolt against their diet and they fall off the bus. And so so you can go about it the long route. You can go and learn on your own and go on your own journey, which we encourage you to do, but there are a lot of shortcuts. And so if you stick with us, we will show you the shortcuts. So this is Victoria. She's a clinical psychologist. Victoria has dealt with addiction therapy. She's dealt with eating disorders, body dysmorphia. These are the areas she specializes in. And she is our in-house psychologist. She's an expert on all of the above. And so she has seen thousands of cases of everything I just spoke about repeating itself over and over again. So if you follow this advice and what we put together in this presentation, it's going to save you a ton of time and it's going to save you a ton of experimenting and potentially failing. Now, I want you to take a second while you're watching this. Take a moment and imagine what it would be like to be at this buffet, serving yourself a plate and not being paranoid about what people are watching you put on your plate, not worrying about how much you're putting on your plate, and feeling at ease and comfortable while you saunter through the buffet and take your plate back to the table, and not worrying about how many calories or how many carbs or what it's going to do for you, and then not feeling guilty at the end of your meal. That is the intention of this talk. So like I said, we're going to deal with the 3 things. I am weak, I have no willpower, I'm an emotional eater, and I must be thin to be worthy of love, etc., etc. So I'm going to tackle the willpower thing first. And a lot of you will know this from previous stuff you've heard about Real Meal Revolution. But the status quo, there are 2 billion obese people in the world. So if you feel like you're the anomaly, that you're the one with the weight issue, totally wrong. There are 2 billion people who are overweight. That's 25% of the Earth's population. There is a $200 billion weight loss industry, okay, and it is booming. And 81% of the people who go on diets, they put the weight back on. And so I just want to touch on that again. So any diet, so they did a study of, I think it was 26 different diet studies. So in other words, meta-analysis of 26 different studies on all the different diets. And they found that on average, over the 5 years following a successful or following a weight loss transformation, people put an average of 80% of their weight back on over 5 years. So that means in a booming industry where we've got all the tech, all the support, all the research and everything that shows people how to eat, all the research that's out there around the different diets, 80% of the people put all their weight back on. And on average, people put on 80% of the weight that they lost while they were losing weight. That is a travesty, absolute travesty. And so what happens is there's this phenomenon called yo-yo dieting, and all of us have yo-yo dieted. I know many of you watching this would have been on diets for your whole life, and I can guarantee you now, if you are watching this, the chances are you're heavier than you were when you started your first diet. So you dieted, and then you lost weight. You lost weight, and then you kind of fell off the bus and put on, and then you lost weight through a diet, and then fell off the bus and put it on, and then you lost weight on a diet, and you fell off the bus and you put it on, and here you are today. So you're not dieting, and you've put on all the weight that you lost. But now, why does this happen? Okay, what makes this happen? And one of the things that happens, there's something called the deficit theory, or deficit premium. And it sounds like an economic term, but what's actually happening is when you take foods away and you see it as depriving yourself, because you are taking something away, you're creating a scarcity, and that actually gives it a premium value. So the moment you take something out of your diet, it immediately becomes more valuable. And so what we do once we've saved for a while is we cash in on the value. But more importantly, what drives us to eat is actually this binge cycle. So I'd like you to, if you relate to this diagram, I want you to comment. So what happens is we feel terrible, we're guilty and ashamed of how overweight we've become. In my case, with alcohol, it was exactly the same. So we feel guilty and ashamed, and then we restrict ourselves. And as we restrict ourselves, we kind of feel brief relief from anxiety. Okay, so now we're on the keto diet, we're on some diet, and we're feeling much better. And then what happens is over time, we build up cravings. And so this deficit premium increases and increases and increases. So as we cut foods out, they become scarce. And then we get physical and emotional cravings. We get triggered. So something like a fight or whatever with our family member happens. And then we go and we have a binge. And this binge is just like out of control eating. And what eventually happens is the binge kind of subsides, but we end up reverting back to the old way we eat. And then we put on the weight and we feel ashamed and guilty of where we are, and we go back to restriction. Okay, that is the binge cycle. If you can relate, please leave a comment or like or put a sad face on the post. But this is it. Okay, so what's actually happening on this yo-yo dieting cycle is that over time you're basically just repeating this binge cycle over and over again, and it's just getting worse and worse. So in a way, dieting actually perpetuates the problem. Thanks. I'm glad some people agree here. So this dieting cycle perpetuates the problem. It actually makes it worse, not better. And the reason for this is that feelings drive behavior. Feelings drive behavior, like we just saw. So what happens is we feel, and then we act, and then we think. And this is often the case. So often the thinking comes after the acting. And if you think about feeling leading to action, and you look at the binge cycle is usually what has led people to go on a weight loss program. Okay, guilt and shame is a feeling. Relief from anxiety is a feeling. Emotional cravings, they come from feelings. Physical cravings, that is a nutrient deficit. Your body's craving food because it needs food, or because there's an insulin spike or what have you. And then there are triggers, and triggers are related to feelings. And so even the best diet in the world, if it's keto, if it's vegan, or whatever Dr. Hyman says, whatever the eating regime you're looking at, even the best diet in the world only addresses 20% of the problem. So what we're going to look at is how to address the cause, not the symptom. Overeating and a weight issue is the symptom of a bigger issue in general. And in biology, we say it's insulin resistance. And sure, there might be there is legit science that shows insulin resistance causes obesity when someone eats a high carb diet. Totally, I agree with that. I do think that even following a keto diet, people have put on weight because they still overeat. So this is not unique to carbohydrates. But the point is, if you can address the cause and not the symptom, you will be able to soften the need to restrict, and the need to binge will go away. So we want to look at how to relieve ourselves from anxiety. We want to look at how to get rid of cravings, be it emotional and physical, how to get rid of triggers or diffuse triggers. And then we want to deal with the guilt and shame. And so if we can get rid of those, we're going to get rid of this restrict, binge cycle. And so this is Jess Barker. She's a client of ours. She's an absolute legend. And she did some work with us. And she said, I feel like I've had a total life revelation. For the first time in years, I have been able to move out of life paralysis, start making enjoyable, healthy choices for my life. I have always tried to treat the symptom, weight gain, and have never looked at the cause. This will take you back to square one so that you understand why you do what you do, and nurture you through making different decisions. The result is not only weight loss, but a totally holistic, sustainable life improvement. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Now, again, imagine having read that, what it would be like if you weren't triggered. You could go to that buffet and just cruise straight through it. So the reason that you think you have no willpower is because every diet you've ever been on has only spoken to you about the diet. It hasn't spoken to you about how to avoid being triggered, how to identify and process emotions properly. It's never taught you that you shouldn't feel ashamed for what you've eaten. Like that's the whole reason you were restricting yourself in the first place. So it's nothing to do with willpower. It's about all of the feelings and dealing with the feelings. Now, I know this is going to sound totally strange, but the next part deals with it in a slightly deeper level. So if you feel like you might be an emotional eater, I would like you to leave a comment as well. Leave a comment, say, yes, totally relate, emotional eater, I always eat the feelings. So I'm going to explain why you are not an emotional eater, or if you are an emotional eater, how that has happened. And so from the minute we are born, we connect through food. You were breastfed on your mother's breast, and you were making eye contact while you were doing that. Okay, I'm getting some 100% and some yes, definitely is. Okay, that's good. So we've got some emotional eaters here. Me too, by the way. And then throughout life, we have this bond that forms around food. And there's this whole thing like there's no love like a mother's love. And maybe you baked cookies or cupcakes with your mother, or as a family. I know my children cook with me. So it's definitely about us connecting around the table. And then you sit and you eat dinner together as a table, at the table as a family. And for a lot of us, that is actually our memory of family, is that one time in the day where we all got together and we had this conversation and we spoke about how things going. And you kind of felt you had the attention of your family. And that was where you really connected as a family around the dinner table. So there was food and connection. And so what that does, when you do something over and over and over and over again, it builds a neural pathway in your brain, which is basically like a path that these sheep are following. And what the sheep are doing is, if you imagine the sheep is a thought, it's going to hit you, and then it's going to go through the exact same process it always does, because it's stuck in this groove in your brain. And the end result of that thought would be to take an action. And so just like you can see with these sheep, they're stuck in this pathway. Their next step, which is their action, is going to be in the exact same direction. And that's what happens with us. We have these neural pathways. Our bodies and our brains try and automate everything that we do so that we don't have to use conscious thought to do stuff. And so what happens is we automate these processes. And I'll show you what happens. So we eat because we have developed a food love connection. So what that means is that we have connected with our family. Some of the happiest times of our lives have been around food. And so we have this neural pathway in our brains that says to feel connected, we need to eat. And I know there are people in my family now who when we get together as a family, or how they give, the way that they demonstrate their love is by giving more and more food. And the way that we demonstrate our gratitude is by eating more and more food. So you haven't done Christmas properly unless you've eaten yourself to death. Whereas if it's not really a big occasion, you just have a cheeky sandwich and get on with it. And so what's happened is over time, we've actually lost connection with people. And instead of connecting with people, we've replaced that connection with the next best thing, because we associate food with connecting with people. Okay, so what happens is when we're distressed, we instead of picking up the phone or calling a parent or calling a family member or connecting with a friend, we actually soothe our emotions with food, because that is the next best thing. And a lot of us don't actually know how to connect with people anymore. And so what you can be in is a marriage, and you think you're spending time together all the time, watching TV, lying in bed together, but you're actually not connecting. And because there's this absence of connection, you end up going to the fridge. If this is you, please leave a comment. I'd love to know. Okay. And so any emotion that is uncomfortable, when we were a child and we were uncomfortable with our emotions, we would express it to our parents. And if the parents gave us love, we learned that expressing our emotions gave us affection. But a lot of us had parents who were baby boomers or children of baby boomers, and there was no time for emotions in those days. So they don't know how to connect. And so what's happened is whenever we spoke about our feelings, we were told to be tough. And because we were told to be tough, we never expressed our emotions. We didn't know how to soothe them. And so we went to the next best thing, which was eating. And so what happens is when we're angry, we're bored, we're lonely, we're stressed, we're sad, we're tired, we're scared, we're grumpy, what do? We go to the fridge to soothe that discomfort. Okay, so what you're looking for is not in the fridge. Okay, and there are two amazing books that I want you to read if you find time. They're by a guy called Johann Hari. And the one is called Lost Connections, and it's about depression, but it's also about reconnecting with people, with your career, basically reconnecting with your life. And the other is about addiction, and he looks at addictive behavior and what drives it. And both of them come back to the same thing, which is connection. So the first thing he says about mental health is that we are not broken. Okay, we are animals whose needs are not being met. So we think we can't stick to a diet because we're broken, but actually we can't stick to a diet because we're using food to soothe a missing connection in our lives, or something that's wrong, that we don't know how to, it's a problem that we don't know how to solve. And then the other thing he says is the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it is human connection. And there's a study on a thing called Rat Park, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, but when human beings are connected with each other and they feel truly attuned, there isn't any need to participate in destructive behavior. And that is what he unpacks. So what he says is, and so many of us have an addictive relationship with food. And what he's saying is the opposite of addiction relationship with food isn't eating food and sticking to a diet. It is human connection. Okay, so if you build connection, and there is theory on building connection, you might feel like you don't know how to build connection. It's possible. If you build connection, what happens is you start to soothe these emotions. So anxiety goes away when you are connected. Emotional cravings go away. You'll still have physical cravings, but you will know that they are physical because you'll be in tune. And triggers go away or subside. So then the only thing left to worry about, if your anxiety levels have dropped, if your emotional cravings have dropped, and you're less easily triggered, the only thing then to look at is guilt and shame. Okay, and this is what ALYSON in France says. She says, this is the first time in almost 6 decades that I've been brave enough to lift the curtain on the triggers and psychological reasons for my overeating. Okay, and she was a client we worked with as well. So she has experienced that the triggers are worth investigating, not the actual action that we take. And so emotional eating is not that you're an emotional eater and that you have to eat when you're emotional. It's that your response to uncomfortable emotions is incorrect. And actually, there are other ways to process emotions without eating, but it's just a skill that we were never taught as children. Only Gen Zs or generations, of our children's children will actually learn this when they're growing up. So so just to go back, the next one I want to talk about is this: I must be thin to be worthy of. Okay, and let me just say, it is important it is important for your health to not be obese. So this isn't about. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't want to be healthier. What I'm trying to say is that what we believe is that unless we are thin and the right weight, we are not worthy. And that is what I'm going to crush as a myth. So there is this beauty culture out there. This is a billboard on the tube in London, and it got absolutely crucified, which it should have. And basically saying, like, are you beach body ready? And what they're saying inadvertently, advertently, what they're saying in this advert is that you shouldn't go to the beach unless you have a body like this. Unless you have a body like this professional model who never eats anything and who relies on photo shoots of her looking like this to feed her family. Unless you look like that, you should not go to the beach. And then this is another classic. This is a billboard by an American burger joint company, and they're notorious for using beautiful women, supposedly perfect women, in these adverts. And what they're saying with this advert is, firstly, they're saying men want a woman like this. It's been photoshopped to within an inch of her life. Men want a woman like this, but not only do men want a woman like this, she also needs to be able to eat junk food like that and still keep her body. And what this reminds me of is Brené Brown. Brené is like my favorite human being in the world. And so she says what the media are programming us to believe is that we need to look perfect, do perfect, and anything else or anything less than that is shaming. And basically, unless we can do perfect, be perfect, and look perfect, we should be ashamed of ourselves. And she is the world's foremost researcher on shame, so she understands this. And that is what we believe. We believe that unless we look ripped, and guys are exactly the same, unless we look ripped, unless we're sticking to the media narrative of what we should look like, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Sorry if you can hear my son crying in the background. He's desperate to join this webinar. The worst case of this is something that I learned about recently called selfie dysmorphia. And so I thought when I saw this picture that selfie dysmorphia was when people see themselves, they're not satisfied, and then they put a filter on to make themselves look better. But selfie dysmorphia is when people like the way that their selfie filter looks more than they like the way they look. And so they pay to have plastic surgery to look more like their filtered self. Just take a moment to process that. People are paying for surgery so that they can look more like what they look like through a filter. Okay. And then obviously what else beauty culture leads us to is this insane history of dieting. So fat burning pills, crazy shakes, calorie counting. In the olden days, when it first started, there were diets like the tapeworm diet, which you can see here. This is the tapeworm diet. I mean, seriously, what these humans. And so there are three amazing quotes that pretty much sum up this entire process. So first, you need to understand what shame does, because a lot of us don't really think we have shame. Oh, I don't have shame. So shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Okay. So if you don't want to go to the beach because you have a problem with your body, that means you're ashamed. It's an uncomfortable or painful feeling that we don't belong or that we're unworthy. So like basically, if you don't believe that you belong on the beach, you are ashamed. And there's no shame in being ashamed because of everything that is in the media culture. And so her next quote, which I absolutely love, is Shame derives its power from being unspeakable. So we don't talk about the things we're ashamed of because we're ashamed of them, obviously. And so if we cultivate enough awareness about shame, in other words, if you understand that this feeling that you have is shame, and you name it and you say, that is shame, and then you speak to it. In other words, you say, that's my shame creeping in, and you talk to other people about it, then the shame dies instantly. So in other words, if you're ashamed of something and you speak about it, the shame goes away. So even if you've done something terrible to a partner, when you keep it a secret, it ruins you and it keeps you anxious and depressed and whatever. And the moment you speak about it, even though you know that the consequences will come, the shame goes away, and then you can almost carry on with your life. And so that goes with in business or whenever you've done something bad that you feel bad about. That's how you kill shame. And often we feel bad about stuff that we shouldn't even feel bad about, which is even more bizarre. And then the final quote from Brené, which I flipping love, is, when we find the courage to share our experiences and the compassion to hear others tell their stories, we force shame out of hiding and end the silence. So in other words, if you're vulnerable and you share your experience, but at the same time you're compassionate and share other people's experiences, shame dies. Because if you are creating a space for others to share, then and you're being open about it, that person's shame dies. And when you share your own shame, that dies too. So you're basically creating a chain reaction of shame demolition, which is what we want to do. And so just to kind of like wrap up this section of the talk, if you feel connected, the anxiety is reduced. If you feel connected, your emotional cravings are reduced because your cup is full. Your cup is full from connection. And if you are connected and aware and self-aware and chatting, the triggers subside. And then when you talk about what's going on and you allow other people to talk to you about what's going on, that shame and guilt disappear and there's a sense of peace. Now, I don't mean like in an esoteric way, like deep inner peace. What I mean is there's peace from shame and guilt, and this narrative in your mind telling you you're not good enough all the time, you actually have some control over that. And so when you have a binge, you can talk to the shame and then you don't feel ashamed. In other words, there's no need to restrict anymore. And if you're controlling this side of the binge cycle, in other words, if you're feeling deeply connected and you're talking to people about what's going on, there's no need to binge anymore. And so what this looks like when you're deeply connected is actually like that. And then when you're connected and you're vulnerable and you're connecting with your shame and talking to other people, you have control over your eating. So can you just take a second and imagine what that would look like? Imagine you were never ashamed of eating crap, because you shouldn't be ashamed of eating crap. Crap's just crap. It's unhealthy. It's not immoral. It's just unhealthy. And that's all it should be, just an unhealthy meal. So this is a message from MAGGI. She was 3 weeks into our program. And she said she spent 3 decades losing weight, then putting on double or triple. So she was a classic yo-yo dieter, using every diet from cabbage soup to weekly weigh-in clubs, everything in between. After 3 weeks of the program, she's gained more insight into the patterns sustaining that behavior that I have in the preceding 30 years. For the first time, I have hope and excitement for the future, all wrapped up in a huge dollop of gratitude. And then she lost 15 kilos. But she didn't lose 15 kilos in 3 weeks. She lost them in conjunction with another program that started slightly earlier. But that's MAGGI. She is a legend. Okay, so what we've done is proven that you do have willpower, or that willpower is not really a thing. It was about the binge cycle and the fact that all diets only tackle 20% of the bigger problem. You might be an emotional eater, but there are other ways to process your emotions without eating, and we just were never taught the skills. And finally, you do not need to be thin to be worthy. Shame is what makes you feel unworthy. And the only thing to do to feel worthy of love and connection or going to the beach is not to get thin. It's not to get thin. I'm telling you this, and believe me, I want you to buy a weight loss program, but that's not going to make you feel better and less ashamed. What's going to make you feel better and less ashamed is if you actually deal with the shame itself by identifying it and processing it. So if that's a lot to take in, I totally get it. And this might come as a surprise to you, but if you know me, you'll know this by now, is I have an amazing service that I would love to tell you about. And so I would love you to just say, if anyone wants to hear about the program that I have to offer, I just want to give you to give me a big fat yes in the comments, because what I'm going to show you is really, really cool. So, but it is a sales pitch. So I'm warning you, I want you to give me permission to sell to you. I know that there's an amen in there, but all I need to see is a little yes, and then I'll give you the pitch. There's a delay, so it's kind of awkward on this end. Yay! Okay, we got some yeses. Okay, amen, brothers and sisters. Okay, so this is what you want. Okay, you want this peace and control. We all want this. Okay, we all want control over our vices and the things that hurt us. And there is a long way to get it. So I've said it's an emotional thing. It's about binging, triggers, and emotional cravings, and then dealing with shame. And the long way to get it is through therapy. And so by the way, I've been for therapy. I loved it, and it was great. But I went for therapy with my marriage. We need to heal stuff. But how therapy works in a textbook way is you see what comes up. So you arrive at the session, the therapist will go, okay, well, what's up? And then you talk about what comes up every time. And sometimes there is a narrative over a series of sessions. But it can take years to really isolate what the problem is, because you've only got an hour and it's once a week or once every 2 weeks. It can be very expensive. And in fact, in South Africa, I mean, I've paid 1,600 or more for a therapy session. Some people charge 1,000 Rand, but on average, about 1,200 Rand for a session. In the UK, 135 pounds. This is what I researched. $110 for a sesh in America, and 267 is the average in Australia. So that's quite a hit per hour. So it can take a while, and it can be quite expensive. So for a year of therapy in South Africa, if you go every week, it could cost you 60,000. In the UK, it costs you 7,000 pounds. In America, 5,000, and in Australia, like 13,000 AUD. And remember, when you go there, you're still just seeing what comes up. You're still just going into the session saying, okay, well, what's the problem this time? And bless the therapist. The therapist's got 60 other clients or 40 other clients that week. So there's a chance they don't remember like exactly the finer details of what's going on. And so what we've developed is the Eating Psychology Online Transformation Program. So this is Victoria. Like I said earlier, she's worked extensively in addiction with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and some heavy addiction on some hard drugs. She's dealt with all of it. In fact, she was the psychologist on South Africa's very first, in fact, the world's very first sugar addiction inpatient program, which ran out of Hout Bay in Cape Town with Corin Thompson. So she was that psychologist. Then obviously we're in partnership with Real Meal, and I'm happy to have some shameless self-promotion here. We are experts in transformation. We understand how to coach. We know what changes behavior. And so together we put this program together to transform your psychology using a lot of Victoria's theory and a lot of our methodology for behavior change. And so what this program includes is it's a 12-week online program, and you get 12 2-hour workshops on Zoom. And the workshops are a combination of theory from Victoria, then breakout rooms in groups of 3. So very small, like safe breakout rooms in the Zoom room, and then weekly homework that you do. And so what I say is it's a contained space. So all the stuff that Brené Brown was talking about, everything I said about human connection, it is like a contained, manufactured environment where you can reconnect, but where you can be vulnerable and talk about the shame that comes with weight. And by the way, this is with people with exactly the same issue as you. And you can put an end to the binge cycle. So that's how the program was designed. And so the price for the program is 12,000 Rand. But wait, it's 12,000 Rand to get control over your eating. And it's $600 in the US. There isn't a different price for different countries. It's $800 in the US, 600 pounds in the UK, and 1,100 in Australia. That's what 12,000 Rand works out to wherever you are in the world. But I want to just do a comparison, because one of the things we've had is feedback on this, like, oh, well, I can go and see a therapist and pay less. And so I'm going to debunk that right now, because the first thing is if you look at therapy, you don't get any notes or theory. You'll go and talk in the hour, and then at the end of the hour, the session's over. Maybe you made your own notes and you walk away. And so in the PSYCH program, you're going to get notes, and you can download slide decks, and you can work through them on your own, and you have them for the rest of your life. The second thing is that you would get 24 hours of therapy, which you might stretch over a year, or you might stretch over over half a year. 24 weeks is just under half a year. And here you're going to get 24 hours over 12 weeks. So it's high impact. Then when you go for therapy, you're not going to get any homework, and there isn't necessarily a strategy where they know that, okay, week one, we're going to deal with this, and the right order to deal with it is in the next session, we're going to deal with that. And to build this psychological journey for you properly, there isn't necessarily that angle if you go for therapy. If you just say, I'd like to deal with my relationship with food, they might have theory and have studied it, but they're also seeing patients without those issues. It's not a targeted attack on the problem. Whereas on the eating psychology program, it is targeted, and the homework specifically relates to the issues that you have with your relationship with food. Second thing is when you go for therapy, you got no peer support. Whereas here, we actually pair you into groups with others where you can connect and share some of the issues you have, because sharing is actually almost more important than getting the theory. And then you create a space for someone else to share with you, and you share with them. And then finally, it's contained vulnerability. So it's not like you're sharing your feelings to a big hall of 50 people who all know you. These people are scattered all over the world. And randomly, once a week, you get together in a Zoom window, which is almost like an imaginary space where you can share openly and not have anyone know your stuff. It's almost like you're in I want to say like in a confidentiality little bubble. Whereas with therapy, you're on your own. So you can have an insane insight. But if you don't have anyone to speak to, you just kind of leave the session and you go, okay, cool, and you make some notes. But there isn't anyone who you can share your absolute epiphany with, to collaborate on it and relate. And so 24 hours of therapy at the rate I said just now would be 28,000 Rand. And that would happen over a year or over 6 months. And at the international rates, it would be like 3,000 pounds, $2,600 or 6,400 Aussie dollars. And now if you compare that and you look at 12,000 Rand, you can see how much of a good deal this is. So the 12,000 Rand for the eating psychology program is an epic deal for solving this problem. And then the next thing I want to tell you about is a bonus that we're running, because it's November, and November is Real Meal Revolution's birthday month. And so we have like a whole bunch of programs that we've bundled at the moment into what we're calling the Finish Strong program. And the Finish Strong program, essentially, you can pay 500 Rand a month for all of those bits and pieces from next year. And it includes an online course and a habit building program and web app access, which gives you recipes, meal plans, etc. And it gives you a series of expert workshops where you can check in, you can come say how's it every week, and you can get an insight from either me or Victoria or Bridget, our registered dietitian, who's flipping amazing. And that's 500 Rand a month. And so what we're doing this time is we're actually including a 6,000 Rand annual membership to Real Meal Revolution. And that comes for free. So the PSYCH program, to get control over your eating, and an annual membership to Real Meal Revolution together is worth 18,000 Rand. To do it for the therapy route without any help from Real Meal on the eating front is going to cost you like 24,000 or 28,000 or something like that. If you do it through Real Meal Revolution, you can do it for 12,000 Rand. Okay, so if that revs your motor and you're keen, you can leave a comment. If you have any questions, you can post your questions in the comment, because Wendy is watching the stream. And so she will leave any answers to your questions in the comments, but she'll also drop her phone number and her email address, and she will drop you a link where you can sign up for this bundle. So it's the RMR membership and eating psychology bundle. Then what's worth mentioning, so I'll just go through a few questions. So a lot of people want to know what the start date is. The start date of this one is January. So you won't be dealing with your eating psychology over the festive season. Start date's Jan the 10th. So it's on Monday, and it's from 4 to 6 p.m. And then if we get enough intake from Australia, we will launch another slot on a Thursday morning. So the Thursday morning slot will be at 9 a.m. South African time, which is 5 p.m. Australia time or Sydney time. And in the UK, depending on daylight saving, it'll be 3 or 4 p.m. But we've done it in the evening so that the people in the Wild West can join as well on the Monday morning. So it starts 10th of Jan. And then we don't run another one for another 3 months. So payment works. You can swipe the credit card. If you like, if you're in South Africa, we have a facility where you can apply for short-term credit. So in other words, you pay this credit provider called PayJustNow. They're super cool. They have an app and they give you instant credit approval. And you can pay 4,000 Rand today, and then 4,000 Rand at the beginning of next month, and 4,000 Rand the following month. So in other words, you get it in 3 equal installments, and then they pay us. Or you can EFT, and you can get those details from Wendy. And yes, you can pay in installments. And so I've already gone through the workshop times. If you can't make a workshop, we will send you updates. We don't record them because it's confidential, but we'll send you the slide deck and we'll give you all the information and the homework. We have a success coach who will make sure that, who check up on you, make sure you're doing all the work and getting all the value. And if you have any questions, now's a good time to post them. And while you are thinking about your questions, and so this deal, by the way, it expires at the end of November. If you sign up now in the next 48 hours before the end of the week or before Wednesday, we will throw in a little something special. We'll mail you a signed Real Meal Revolution book. And what else was I going to say? That's it. The next thing that I wanted to show you was how I invaded France in my Speedo. So you pop your questions there, chew on what I'm saying for a bit, check out the links that Wendy's popped in there, and I'll tell you about my little Speedo experience. So for those of you who were watching yesterday, you would have seen that there was that I swam from Mozambique to Madagascar. And that's us. We confronted an oceanic white tip. It's actually quite a small one. That's only about the size of us. But we saw a much bigger one a few days earlier. And so if you have a look here, we swam from here to here. And then on the way back, we were going down to Vilanculos or somewhere to fly out. And we stopped at this little island in the middle of the channel called Jonno. Now, about 5 years earlier, our captain had been there and he had moored off the coast of Jonno. So this is what the island looks like. It's absolutely tiny. And he had moored over here and radioed in to the island because there's an international frequency. And when he radioed in, he said, "Hey guys, I'm just mooring here. I hope you don't mind. I'm parking my boat." And there were some Frenchmen, and they said, "Oh, why don't you come on shore and have some beers? Come have beers and a barbecue." And he said no, he had to go because he had to get the boat back for delivery. So now at the end of our swim mission, he says, "We know these French guys who were on this weather station. So let's go and stop at Jonno. We'll park the boat, we'll go for a snorkel, and then maybe we can have some beers with these French guys on this island." And so anyway, we moor the boat here. I'm not lying, some of the most beautiful tropical reef I've ever seen in my whole life, like parrotfish, so big. And I swam over a massive stingray that like arched its sting. It looked like it was going to sting us. Just insane beauty like you've never seen before. And we walk onto the beach, and as we walk on, this is the beach that we walked onto. These aren't our photos because we had our cameras confiscated and they had to delete all the photographs. But the captain walks up first, and he walks up this dirt road, and then he gets seen by a guy in full military outfit. And the guy wearing his full military outfit says, "Hey, what are you doing? You cannot be here." And it turns out that this actually wasn't a weather station. This was a French military post, because this is actually a French territory. So we thought we were snorkeling onto like a weather station, and we had invaded France literally in our Speedos. And so we were accosted, and some of the youngsters who were actually about our age, they said, if the gendarmerie wasn't here, then we would be drinking beers and having barbecue. But the thing is, there was a guy from Paris who was part of the French military police, and he was like doing a check-in on these youngsters. So he was there. And so anyway, they arrested us, but arrested meant they made us sit around this table for the whole day, because they had no idea what to do. They were caught with their pants down. So he was on the phone to Réunion, which is the nearest French territory. And the guys in Réunion were on the phone to Paris, to like whatever their CIA is. And because they had no idea what to do with these 5 South Africans who had just invaded France in their Speedos. And anyway, eventually they let us go, but not without taking mug shots of us in our swimwear against this tree. And in fact, they actually stamped the captain's passport, and then they let us go. And so that's my story. Thank you very much for staying all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you feel like you have a deeper understanding of the psychology of eating now. It's a huge topic, and it's not what everyone thinks. And weight issues, very little to do with weight, and much more to do with very little to do with eating, and much more to do with the other stuff around eating, like our psychology and our history. So I encourage you to ask questions about this program. We're starting a new one in Jan. The deal is so sweet. It's a great deal, and you can start learning more about food straight away. So check in, give Wendy a message, ask a question here, and some of the other people who have been on the program might come and answer it. But for the meantime, enjoy your evening, go think about it, and I hope to see you on the other side. All the best, and thank you so much. I'll stop sharing so you can see my whole face. Okay, bye everyone. Have a good evening.